Are out-of-body experiences evidence of an entire multiverse at our fingertips with information that could help us transcend our human experience? Can we hack our own minds and even the alleged extrasensory abilities in our bodies to explore strange new worlds and boldly go where no man has gone before? We're not geeks. Maybe Star Trek had it right. But instead of traveling through space, maybe all of that is achieved through out-of-body experiences. What if? And what if the governments of the world have been interested in this far longer than you'd even believe? Of course they were. And it's not just governments. Meditators and men of prayer throughout the ages have reported they could leave their own bodies, and researchers wanted to unlock the secrets as to why. From the head of the Nazi Party in the 1940s to CIA collaborators in the 70s to regular people in our modern age, find out who's been interested in cracking the code of the human mind and body. And why wouldn't they be if there really were something to it? Just think about how it would benefit a person, a government, or an institution who could control that ability. You can probably start to guess. These are the attempts that have been made to conquer the mind and extrasensory abilities, to use them as a weapon. Join Metaphysical for a show that's not just out of this world, but is an entire out-of-body experience. And a quick reminder to like and subscribe to the Metaphysical channel to make sure you don't miss out on any updates or content drops. All your support lets us keep making this content, so thanks a lot for watching, for wearing the Metaphysical merch I designed, and for drinking our Metaphysical coffee. It'll definitely get you through your own long nights of research, that's for sure. Now, have you ever heard of the Stargate Project? If you haven't, that's probably because its existence wasn't even declassified until 1995. In the 1970s, the United States Army and the Defense Intelligence Agency started secretly funding psychic and parapsychological research from the Stanford Research Institute, or SRI. And it wasn't just a few dollars thrown at some independent little group to see if they could come up with anything useful to the government. A bunch of sister projects under different code names and departments were established, like Project Grillflame, Sunstreet, Gondola Wish, and others. But what's important is they were all grouped under the Stargate Project. So what were they so desperate to research? The Stargate Project was focused on remote viewing, which is when someone can remotely, from a distance, perceive people and events in other locations without physically being there. And the government was seeing how there was a whole lot of overlap with out-of-body experiences. At Fort Meade in Maryland, a hub was set up to analyze the results coming in from SRI's teams of remote viewers, along with research happening at the Monroe Institute, run by the man who first popularized the term out-of-body experience, Bob Monroe. And what they found was astounding. But before I get into Monroe's discoveries and methods, or how the government was using them and why, we need to jump back, because obviously this interest in the mind didn't just spring up overnight. It was built on decades of research done by other scientists, and some of it was extremely unethical, or even bizarre. If you want to know where the OG research for near-death experiments and out-of-body experiences took a giant leap forward, you have to look at World War II, when the biggest powers in the world were in fierce competition to create the most effective weapons. On both sides of the pond, that didn't just mean bigger bombs, it meant figuring out extrasensory abilities and the human mind, believe it or not. For the Nazi Party, that involved diving into the world of the occult. Now, in my research, I found that Dr. Walter Johann Stein knew Hitler personally when he was young, watching him visit occult bookshops and search for the secrets of the universe. Well, Stein recounted to Trevor Ravenscroft, who published the information in his book, The Spear of Destiny, how an entirely occult-obsessed Hitler would travel to the museum in Vienna to stare for hours at the historic spear. Why? Because it supposedly gave him visions of glory, and he'd have power over the entire world if he could obtain it. It sounds crazy, but it's true. This fact is important here to the point that I'm about to make. In fact, I did a 9-episode series on Hitler's hunt for relics of power because I'd uncovered that the Nazis were hunting for a whole bunch of objects, like the Spear of Destiny and the Ark of the Covenant, which they thought would bring them ultimate power. If you want to hear more specifics, you can actually get access to these episodes at themetaphysical.tv because it gets really deep. But the important part here is that in the party's upper echelons, the Nazis' quest for world domination was totally tied to the esoteric world. But what does that have to do with out-of-body experiences and conquering the human mind? Well, did you know that the Nazis would ruthlessly experiment on available prisoners and use them as human guinea pigs? They put people in ice water baths or left them outside in the freezing cold of winter, then recorded their body temperatures, muscle responses, heart rate, and urine composition as their body temps dropped. Then, they would try to revive them from near to death. If you think they were doing this just because they were ruthless bastards, think again. Like, everything they did, they were after something. Perhaps a weapon that would give them the upper hand in addition to a way to revive their soldiers on the battlefield. After all, you don't just subject groups of people to hypothermia and revive them, or put them in pressure chambers to see how close you can get them to death before you can bring them back without there being more. If they were studying the occult and wanting superpowers, of course they were interested in taking near-death experiences further, figuring out how they work. Unfortunately, almost none of their esoteric experiments are in our history books. I wonder why. But that didn't mean their research was forgotten or swept under the rug. During Project Paperclip, Nazi scientists were magically forgiven of their past wrongdoings when they took all their bizarre, metaphysical, mad scientist know-how over to the US and Russia and continued to develop things further. Where did all their research on UFOs, witchcraft, Tibetan monk secrets, and the human body go when they brought it to other countries? Fast forward to the 1970s, when the time was ripe. Enter Bob Monroe, who made out-of-body experiments take an even greater giant leap forward, and how the military was extremely interested in weaponizing it, possibly without his knowledge. Bob Monroe was the man, the myth, and the legend who coined the term out-of-body experience. He believed that an out-of-body state is a form of sleep running on the autonomic nervous system. Now, if it's been a while since you were in a science class like me, that's the part of the nervous system that regulates processes that are involuntary, like pumping your heart or breathing or digestion. Obviously, when you're asleep, all those things need to keep working without you consciously doing them. So it's kind of mind-blowing that Monroe thought an out-of-body state was a form of sleep running on the autonomic nervous system too. We're involuntarily having out-of-body experiences? In fact, Monroe's research showed a lot more than that. In 1977, he gave a fascinating interview in which he said, quote, "A lot of dreaming actually is a distortion or a memory of an OBE. For example, a flying dream is often the conscious mind's interpretation of being in the out-of-body state, the non-physical state. Another instance is the falling dream. You guys have had those before, right? That's generally accepted as the re-entry into the physical body. Yeah, ever had that happen to you where you're asleep and then suddenly you do one of those, like you've fallen and landed back in your bed? Maybe you were flying around having an out-of-body experience and really did land back in your body. You just can't remember that out-of-body experience. But hang on, how did Monroe come to any of these conclusions? Why did the Stanford Research Institute want to work with him, and why did the government find his out-of-body research so fascinating that the CIA, Army, and other departments developed entire remote viewing programs based on his work? Here's where Bob Monroe's training program, the M5000, comes into play. I know, it's hard to get past the 80s infomercial product name because we all know it sounds like some cheesy veggie dicer or something.
Vegematic 2 now available at only $9.95.
But the M5000 was the early name for the Gateway program. It was designed to develop and explore human consciousness, or really to help people do it themselves. But wait, how do you explore your own consciousness or the potential of your own mind and body? With exercises that would, quote, know and understand better your higher self. Learn and experience profound areas of expanded awareness, achieve and willfully control your physical body and the out-of-body state, and communicate with and visit other energy structures and realities. What? The Monroe Institute tested over 1,900 participants and over 3,000 exercises over 10 years. At least those are the numbers reported in the Monroe memo on the CIA archive. Monroe said in an interview in 1977 that they'd run through some 5,000 people to develop the training system, so the numbers were obviously growing fast. Basically, in a technique called hemisync, they had people listen to binaural beats and recorded phrases. As specific sound waves were pulsed into each respective ear, it would sync the two hemispheres of the brain, and people would drop into a borderland sleep state rather than deep delta sleep. Monroe's technique would train people to stay in that state and remain conscious, where the body was asleep but the mind was awake, in what was called Focus 10. Now, if you don't know what a binaural beat is, we're going to take a second to let you listen to those. If you don't have them on, pop on some headphones and check this out right here. In the process of going through the hemi-sync technique, people would commonly have out-of-body experiences. I mean, think about it. Your mind functions in all kinds of brain states. If they could figure out what state the brain is in when it's having an out-of-body experience, then to induce it on purpose, a person could just train their body to be in that state, or put in that state with technology like headphones and beats. Monroe patented his binaural beats technique in 1975, making it the first official method for inducing out-of-body experiences. But he knew this went back a lot further than him. He said, quote, "The idea of a second body is very common throughout history. Saints are often seen in their second bodies during apparitions. Ghosts are another example. The second body acts as a transformer of energy from the soul to the body. Frankly, I don't know why they exist," unquote. Despite not knowing why the out-of-body state existed, though, Monroe was able to study it extensively, and research from other groups didn't stop there, of course. By 1977, scientists had found that out-of-body experiences could be triggered by therapeutic drugs, marijuana, LSD, anesthesia, hypnosis, meditation, sensory deprivation, or extreme stress. This open secret was so well researched by different groups at the time that New York Magazine wrote a pretty thorough article on the state of out-of-body research in 1977, although it was a pretty skeptical presentation of the information. They named the most notorious out-of-body experiencers of the time, like our boy Ingo Swann, who we've mentioned in a bunch of different episodes. He was the extremely accurate remote viewer who helped the Stanford Research Institute develop the Stargate Project. They also wrote about a parapsychologist who worked at Brooklyn's Maimonides Medical Center, which was the pioneer in dream research at the same time, if you remember from our Dreams episode. And the magazine also wrote about Bob Monroe, of course. These were the experts in the out-of-body field. So how common is this out-of-body experience thing? How far back does it actually go? And why try to induce out-of-body states in the first place? The implications of the Monroe Institute's research, the Gateway Project, and the Stargate Project are where things get the most interesting. Bob Monroe reported in one interview that 15% of his experimenters had an out-of-body experience. He said it required practice, but that there was a 100% success factor in those who continued the exercises they learned. So basically, when you learn to control your own body, a 100% success rate is pretty much guaranteed. That's pretty mind-blowing. University of California parapsychologist John Palmer said parapsychologists are interested in the out-of-body experience for two reasons. One, because the OBE might be a state conducive to ESP or extrasensory perception, and two, because it would have implications of survival after death, since what can function outside of the body before death might be able to function outside of the body after death. Dr. Raymond Moody wrote a book called Life After Life about near-death experiences. Well, we all know those frequently involve out-of-body experiences. After chronicling people's life-changing experiences over and over, Moody found that people who survived them were no longer afraid to die. So the therapeutic applications here are massive. I mean, imagine you not being afraid to die just because you know you're going to pop out of your body and you've been doing it your whole life. That's crazy. Bob Monroe ran one version of his out-of-body program specifically for terminally ill people called the Star System Program. He said, "It's a program to help the dying get a foothold on the other side. If there's a great beyond, there's a place for out-of-body. Given 3 months, we can easily train a person to achieve out-of-body experience and change his concept of death and establish a beachhead where he's going." I mean, is anyone else mind blown at all of this? It could also potentially help people with extreme grief. After months of practicing at home, one woman said she met her deceased son and he told her not to worry about him. He was not alone. Okay, but how about you? Are you afraid to die? Joan Cron wrote in New York Magazine, quote, "While there's no question that people are concerned about the hereafter, studies show that people don't fear death nearly as much as they fear dying. Will I be in pain, disfigured, abandoned? These are the universal fears. What does it feel like to die is a question that's common to patients who know they are dying. So to me, that's a huge reason you'd study this stuff, to resolve the fear of death. Bob Monroe found that every human has the capacity for an OBE. He said virtually everyone moves into an OBE during sleep. They just don't remember it. If you can prevent a fear of death or the unknown, travel to amazing places, meet beings on other planes, and gain information you couldn't have known any other way than leaving your body, if you can master your own mind and body, if you can prove that the soul is immortal because it still exists outside the body, then there's a lot more to explore. Well, you might be asking me, Rob, what do you think about all this? Well, have you stopped to ask yourself why it was called the Stargate Project? Did they call it this because space isn't what we initially thought it was? What if to explore the universe, we don't need rockets? Turns out the true secret is that the human body might be the highest piece of technology on the entire planet. And what if all you need is what was provided with you at birth to find the truth about the simulation we live in? I think this out-of-body research is so far beyond the Monroe Institute's findings from the 70s that it would make our heads spin right now. Have you ever heard of remote influencing? Whereas remote viewing is looking at events or people from a distance without your body actually being there, remote influencing is influencing or affecting those events or people from afar. In one instance, Bob Monroe said he tested that out during his own OBE when he pinched a woman who was 200 miles away and left her with a black and blue mark. Now, he was asked why he didn't simply pick up a pen and write a note to prove he could really travel in an OBE. He explained that it would be very difficult. It's like trying to pick up a glass of water with a hand made out of air. And if you're still confused, he said, quote, "An important thing to remember is that when I pinched the lady, I wasn't pinching her physical body, but this energy body that is inside the physical body and responds to the physical body. This is where it gets a little heavy in terms of the physics." Okay, so now that makes sense. Now, Monroe's research was on the side of helping people stop being afraid of death and hacking their own minds. But he was working with the government and private companies, which have huge interests in this kind of thing. If out-of-body experiences are real, you can gain information, can't you? If you can remotely influence things without being there, forget about a space race or weapons of mass destruction. This just became an interdimensional battlefield the countries of the world are playing on. But really, that's also these researchers' downfall. A lot of them think this is just about weaponizing the human mind. Actually, though, it's not about understanding some potential consciousness limit of the brain. When you break through from the confines of your body, you learn you can break free of the confines of our world. And then you start to learn more about yourself and the universe. Do you really need to pay an institute a bunch of money to train you how to put yourself into an altered brain state? Not really. You can make your own binaural beats and put in your own goals or learn to master yourself through meditation or by other means. For example, when regular people go into sensory deprivation chambers, about 5 in every 100 are having visual experiences and 1 in 1,000 are having full-on out-of-body experiences. People suffering from PTSD are also letting go of their trauma through these therapeutic experiences. This information was given to me by a good friend who owns a float spa company, so this is some first-hand knowledge. So it's not about Bob Monroe or the Stargate Project or things that put this amazing ability in a box. Out-of-body experiences aren't just proof that there's something else out there. They're proof that we're limitless, and that's worth exploring. But what do you think? Governments think that they can map the brain, figure out how to go beyond the confines of the body, and weaponize that for either literal weapons of war or to gain scientific knowledge. But what have you been able to do in your own out-of-body experience? Let me know in the comments if you've begun to hack your own mind. If you like this episode and want more, please consider supporting my work by pledging on our website, themetaphysical.tv. With your help, I can make more videos, more merch, which I designed myself, and also more exclusive episodes, like the hardest things to remote view. What is the observer effect? Strange anomalies of Maya history, and what happened to scientists who dared talk about anti-gravity. You can also get a bag of delicious metaphysical coffee every month if you want your mornings to be interstellar. Remember to like and subscribe to help the channel grow as well if you wouldn't mind, and if you want to hear longer, pretty awesome conversational episodes right on YouTube, our Metaphysical podcast has you covered. With that, I hope you thought this episode was not just out of this world, but was a freaking out-of-body experience.